say sorry I can't do anything at all.
All right, welcome everyone. Thursday it is, I guess. Wow, this week's going fast on me. There's just been so much going on the news front. We had Tuesday night football. That's why I thought it was Wednesday. We just had football 2 days ago. So no Thursday night football this week, but we are here with the Flurry Sports live stream, coming to you all to talk some fantasy football strategy and some NFL news here heading into the weekend. I'm joined tonight by Coach Kevin Schroeder. Kevin, how you doing?
Doing good, Henry. Looking forward to talking a little football here, and should be fun.
Awesome. And before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that we are brought to you tonight by Monkey Knife Fight. Monkey Knife Fight is a unique prop platform. It combines props with DFS. So head on over to Monkey Knife Fight now. You can see the promo code there on the side of the stream. Use the promo code Flurry and sign up. You'll get a free $5 to play with, and they'll also match your deposit dollar for dollar up to $50. So that is Monkey Knife Fight, promo code Flurry. All right, Coach, we have got to get started because as we just come on the air here with some breaking news. Of course, during Tuesday Night Football a couple nights ago, the New York Jets, my New York Jets, released disgruntled running back Le'Veon Bell. Adam Gase retaining his position in New York longer than Bell. Who would have thought? But now here, just minutes ago, we have gotten word that Le'Veon Bell has officially signed with the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Wow, because this offense is loaded now. Bell is going to join a backfield that already includes rookie running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And Bell's actually going to be the bigger of the two. So we could see maybe some red zone touches here for Le'Veon Bell. We already know he's a prolific pass catcher out of the backfield. It's going to give Patrick Mahomes another receiving weapon to go along with Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, and the rest. This is just a case of the rich getting richer here with the Chiefs landing Le'Veon Bell. Coach, any immediate thoughts for this as far as the Chiefs go? And also from a fantasy standpoint, there is a bit to unpack here. And maybe we can dive into that a little bit more after we get your initial reactions.
Yeah, no, I think this is a perfect example of the rich getting richer here at Le'Veon Bell. Great sign by the Chiefs. Clyde Edwards-Helaire really came out of the first week of the season and looked like he was really going to be spectacular. And he's been pretty quiet aside from the first week there. And I think that Bell will give them a great 1-2 punch. Bell's a great receiver out of the backfield, great for short yardage. And I think that offensive line there fits well with Le'Veon Bell's style, where he kind of is very patient and waits for that hole to develop and then kind of usually explodes at that point. But he is a great pickup by the Chiefs. I think that they have so many weapons. It's just an embarrassment of riches there.
Yeah, man, Andy Reid is going to have a lot of fun. I can already tell scheming up plays here for Le'Veon Bell and the rest of this offense going forward. Now, from a fantasy standpoint, Clyde Edwards-Helaire went in the first round here of, I would say, just about every fantasy draft this season, right? And maybe early second round in a few. But with the news of Damian Williams, arguably last year's Super Bowl MVP, opting out due to COVID-19 before the season, Edwards-Helaire's stock just shot up even as a rookie running back. And now he's got company here in this backfield. And yeah, he's had Darwin Thompson, Darrell Williams coming in there doing a little bit in short yardage and third down situations. But Le'Veon Bell, like I mentioned earlier, he's the bigger back here. And that's really interesting to me. Edwards-Helaire, not necessarily the guy you want in the backfield to punch it in goal line situations, short yardage situations down in the red zone. But we know Bell can do it all as well. So in your eyes, I guess, how much of his role here, how much of his volume is Clyde Edwards-Helaire going to be ceding to Le'Veon Bell on a week-to-week basis? And, how do you kind of see them shaking out here? And I know we haven't even seen them play yet. The signing just happened here before we came on the air. So, there's a lot that we're still going to have to see play out. What are your initial thoughts on how this backfield might play out going forward?
Yeah, I guess my initial thought would be, so I believe Bell cannot play this week. I believe I'm on the update I'm reading here. It sounds like Bell's ineligible to suit up against the Bills on Monday due to COVID-19 protocols. So that means that this week is Clyde Edwards-Helaire's last chance to really go out there and make as big of an impression as he can. Because I think week 7 there, I think Le'Veon Bell is going to step in there. Maybe initially he starts in getting phased in a little bit, and we don't see, maybe it's more of a 70-30 for Clyde Edwards-Helaire initially, but I do see Bell probably taking over lead back duties here. I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire will probably take a back seat, or at least be on the short end of a 60-40 split. That would be my thought as far as initially kind of how I see this shaking out. I just think that Bell brings some things to the table that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a good receiver, but I think Bell's a better receiver. So you might lose some third down opportunities. I think I'd rather have Bell in at the goal line. I'd rather have the big body down there to bang it in than, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is only 5'6", shorter guy, and definitely not as big of a presence near the goal line. So I could see Le'Veon Bell getting a lot more of the at least receptions, which in PPR is big, and the touchdowns, so I think Bell of the two is going to be the more valuable fantasy back going forward, and maybe not necessarily week 7, but week 8 onward.
Yeah, I 100% agree. If you're just joining us, breaking news here off the top of the show tonight, Le'Veon Bell officially signing with the Kansas City Chiefs after his release from the New York Jets here this past Tuesday. So Bell landing with the defending Super Bowl champs. And Coach and I kind of breaking down here how we think this backfield might play out going forward from a fantasy standpoint. Now, it is worth noting, and I guess I'll kind of ask you this in a question sort of way. Le'Veon Bell, obviously it didn't work out with the Jets, right? But over the last 2 years, he has the second lowest yards per carry of any back in the NFL. And the only other one is now the new New York Jets starting running back, Frank Gore. So, is Le'Veon Bell still the Pittsburgh Steelers version that we all grew accustomed to? And, would obviously, I think, hope he is here going to the Chiefs. Is he still that running back, though? Do you think that was all poor scheming, poor offensive line play? There certainly has been a lot of both of those going on in New York here with the Jets the last couple of years. Or did Le'Veon Bell lose a step? And I think from your fantasy breakdown there, where you think he's going to, kind of assume maybe the head position in a 60-40 role, you're leaning to, no, he's still a plenty serviceable and qualified running back here.
Yeah, I might make some waves here, but I fail to see how Adam Gase is still a head coach in the NFL, and Bill O'Brien and Dan Quinn have already lost their jobs. I think Bill O'Brien, the coach, was an all right coach. He made some questionable decisions in his general manager role, so I think he should have been relieved of those duties. But to me, Adam Gase has really not had success anywhere he's gone. He's kind of left train wrecks behind, traded away good players, not done well with the personnel that he's had. I believe was he in Miami when they got rid of Drake as well? Am I correct on that?
I believe he was still there, yeah.
Yeah, I think he had got Drake out of town there in Miami, and to me, I fail to see how he's still a coach in the NFL. I just think that the Jets team, aside from Jamison Crowder being a bright spot there. I don't know what it seemed like it was a conflict between him and Bell. You do question a little bit that Bell's now on his third team in 4 years here, and he sat out a whole season as well there. So you question a little bit maybe his drive if he still has that. But I think when you're looking at moving from the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line and the holes that they would create to the Jets, and now you're going to the Chiefs here, and their offensive line is a pretty good offensive line. I think we're going to see him returning to closer to the back he was in Pittsburgh than the back he is in the Jets. And plus, Andy Reid is the master at scheming and getting running backs to produce at the highest level. Brian Westbrook, LaShawn McCoy, the list goes on and on for the running backs, even back to Philadelphia, and then now last year with Damian Williams and in the Chiefs system there. So I do think that Le'Veon Bell still has some left in the tank, and I think he'll be a very good producer down the stretch run here.
So I was actually wrong on that. Kenyon Drake got traded to the Cardinals last year, so that would have been after Gase's tenure in Miami there had ended. But to your point about Adam Gase, like the clear-cut example of him not exactly knowing what he's doing or being qualified here to be calling plays and being an NFL head coach, to me, it's Ryan Tannehill. Like, this guy was left for dead in Miami. I mean, I know he was battling injuries and such. They could never get it together down there, Tannehill and Gase, with the Dolphins, and they ultimately move on from him. And look at the resurgence. It's like a renaissance in Tennessee. He was terrific against Buffalo on Tuesday night, running the football, throwing the football, not the turnovers. It's a tough situation, I think, for the Jets going forward. And I think the only reason Adam Gase still is a coach longer than a Dan Quinn, a Bill O'Brien, is Joe Douglas has made up his mind here for the Jets that they're all in on tanking this season and trying to get as much draft capital as they can going forward. And the bloated contract for Le'Veon Bell, there's no way you're going to trade that. We already know kind of how the running back market is shaking out here and how that's panned out for teams that have paid up to running backs long term. I'm not saying the Panthers necessarily made a mistake in paying Christian McCaffrey, but, you pay him, now he's injured. And look at Mike Davis stepping in, kind of doing the same sort of thing there. So it's not surprising no team was going to bite on that trade. And the Jets are eating the money here. And, the real winner, I think, in this situation, it's got to be Le'Veon Bell, right? He gets away from the coach that he didn't want to play for. He's playing for the defending champs who are primed and ready to repeat, at least from everything I've seen here. I know a little slip up against Las Vegas this past weekend. But, man. And here's the best part, Coach. Chiefs play the Jets in Week 8.
Well, that he seems like a lock then for DFS lineups that week.
100%.
The revenge game. That being said, Frank Gore might have a revenge game against the Chiefs that week as well. I don't know if he ever played for the Chiefs, but it seems like he's played for most teams around the leagues.
I don't know if the Chiefs are one of them, but man, Frank Gore and this revenge stuff. Zach and I are always talking about finding the revenge angle to every Frank Gore game. Zach, do you have anything off the top of your head for the Chiefs?
I mean, I'm sure there's something we can figure out for the Chiefs here. Le'Veon Bell played for the Steelers. Man, there's got to be something. There's got to be something here. I would guess that
we're gonna have to do some more digging.
Give me a second. I'll be back. I got it.
All right, perfect. Zach's gonna work on that. Coach and I are gonna move along here as we do have some other news and analysis to get to here tonight. But Le'Veon Bell signing with the Chiefs, sending shockwaves across the NFL and fantasy football alike here, as there's some shuffling going on in that Kansas City backfield. Coach, the other piece of news I wanted to talk about here real quick before we kind of dive into the start-sit analysis for the week is the Atlanta Falcons shutting down their facility today due to a single positive COVID-19 test. The team, the game has not entirely been ruled out this weekend. The Falcons are scheduled to play at the Minnesota Vikings. What is it with the Vikings and running into these COVID teams? They were the team to play the Titans right before their outbreak. So the game is still on as of now. It's Sunday at 1 p.m. in Minneapolis. And it looks like Marlon Davidson, defensive tackle, was placed on the reserve COVID-19 list. This is significant from a fantasy standpoint to me because this is a game with two below average defenses and two offenses that, it doesn't always click, but they're plenty capable of putting up yards, putting up points, and putting up fantasy points. Of course, the other piece of news in this game is Dalvin Cook, very much his status in doubt for Sunday's contest at Atlanta. Coach, I don't know if you have any major thoughts on Atlanta, Minnesota. To me, it feels like there's a lot of starters coming out of this game. And in terms of fantasy, there's a lot of players that would be in starting lineups. And so if you would be heavily relying on this game, are you panicking over one test and, kind of trying to find some substitutes here now, or should we just ride this out?
So I'm actually just I just put it into a search here too. I was just looking to see if there was any other positive tests. It does look like there's one more positive test here. So I'm seeing two positive tests have been reported by the Minneapolis Star-Tribune here. It's saying that the game is still on though as of right now. So I'm not sure. It's definitely best practice to keep up on these games as the changes come out. But it looks like there's two positive cases now. So my guess is there might be a few more coming in here as well. But I agree with you. I think there's some fantasy assets in this game. Actually, in the Start Sit article for this week, I highlighted a couple of different players in this game, one to start, one to sit, but there are plenty of other great starts. The Falcons defense has been terrible against the pass this year. And the Falcons offense started out the year pretty hot. If Julio Jones is out, it's kind of seemed like they've really gotten pretty quiet as of late, but the Vikings secondary is also susceptible, although it's shown some improvement. But yeah, there's definitely some fantasy goodness in this game, and if it doesn't go, it will definitely affect a lot of lineups.
Yeah, 100%. So maybe kind of double down if you have impactful Falcons, impactful Vikings that would be in your lineup on Sunday. Kind of maybe start formulating a little bit of a backup plan here, because the last thing you want to do is be caught totally with your with your pants down Sunday morning if they cancel this game and you haven't made a move and everybody's pretty much scooped up and you're hung out to dry here in week 6. I guess that's perfect segue. Coach was mentioning a few of the names in this game that he brought up in his Start Sit article, and they're in the quarterback section. So a reminder, flurrysports.org. That is the place where you can find Coach's weekly fantasy football Start Sit article, along with all the other great fantasy football, NFL betting, college football content from our writing staff. That's flurrysports.org. And in the quarterback section, related to this Atlanta-Minnesota game here that we've been talking about, because of the couple of positive COVID cases, Coach was recommending this week to start Kirk Cousins against the Falcons and sit Matt Ryan against the Vikings. So we're on totally opposite sides here on teams set to face off against one another should this game go off. Coach, kind of walk us through what you're thinking here. I think Kirk Cousins against the Falcons defense, anyone against the Falcons defense, man, You could start me against the Falcons defense, but yeah,
Definitely.
kind of take us through what you're thinking. I'm curious, especially to hear about the sit Matt Ryan call here.
Yeah. So as far as Kirk Cousins, so last week I mentioned Teddy Bridgewater in the article as a great start against the Falcons, and he came through. And this year, if you're playing streaming quarterbacks or if you have anyone questionable or you're trying to decide between two quarterbacks, the Falcons are giving up 30.5 fantasy points a game to opposing quarterbacks. Last week in the article, I mentioned that they had given up over 30 fantasy points in each of the 4 games that they played to that point. Actually, it was 29 point something. Aaron Rodgers only had 29 points against them because they were basically 29. In run the clock mode for the whole fourth quarter. So, but Cousins put up over 21 points in his 2 home starts this year. And then the Vikings aren't looking to have Dalvin Cook this week. So with that, I felt that they're going to have to go away from. They do run the ball at a 55% clip, which is one of the higher an over 50% clip, which is one of the higher percents in the league. But I think that with Madison starting and without Cook, I do think we're going to see Cousins airing it out a little bit more, especially considering the opponent. And so definitely I would look to start him in season-long leagues and even, put him in Thielen in a DFS lineup, or him and Jefferson in a DFS lineup, or even stack all 3 there.
Yeah, sounds good. And then on Matt Ryan, the sit call. So I was just looking at some numbers here real quick. The Vikings, they're not great against opposing quarterbacks in fantasy either, allowing 19.91 fantasy points per game to the position. I know Matt Ryan's kind of been struggling here the last few weeks. So why so bearish on Matt Ryan, given what I think a lot of people are presuming will be a shootout?
Yeah, so a couple of items that I found as I was looking at this matchup here. First off, Matt Ryan has not passed for a touchdown since September 27th, so he's now gone 3 weeks without a touchdown pass. And then the Falcons might be without Julio Jones again this week. That seems to have it seems like the offense has been struggling without Julio out there. They've struggled to put the ball in the end zone. They've had 3 straight weeks where they've not put up many points. Between Ridley seems to be a constant in this offense, and I'd put him out there every week. I think he's one of the top wide receivers out there, but it seems like they're not putting the ball in the end zone. And with the changes at the top as well, with Quinn out and Raheem Morris taking over as coach, there's enough questioning there that I have Matt Ryan right around like 16, 17 at quarterback this week. So to me, I think you can find better options that are going to give you a better floor. His ceiling might be pretty high still, but I think he's a little too boom bust for a season long where you should get close to 20 points out of your quarterback. And so he could definitely clear that this week, especially if Julio plays. But if Julio's out, I definitely wouldn't want Matt Ryan in my lineups this week.
Yeah, completely understandable. The Falcons offense is kind of taking a step back here last couple of weeks. And, maybe you were like, well, it's Green Bay, it's Monday night. The Packers defense, they don't rank great in efficiency metrics, but I think Zadarius Smith, a guy like him, being able to get after the passer a little bit, that's a real X factor. Almost feels like Green Bay's defense might, efficiency-wise, I guess for me, be a little bit ranked below what the sum of their parts actually is. Did I say that correctly? I don't know how that reference is. I'm just going to leave it right there. But then Atlanta goes and plays Carolina here this past weekend, and Matt Ryan again struggling, the passing game struggling. No Julio Jones. You're only going to get away with that, I think, for so long, especially when your defense has given up so many points that you just have to score. And the Panthers, Todd Gurley had a great fantasy day against Carolina, which the weakness of their defense, efficiency-wise, is against the run. So Todd Gurley owners have been happy lately, but the rest of these Atlanta fantasy weapons just not getting it done. And to your point earlier, the Vikings have shown signs of improvement defensively. You know, the cornerbacks are still young, but I think they're getting better at taking the pressure off of them, not leaving them in so many man-to-man situations. And if a guy like Julio Jones isn't out there, that allows you to throw different looks at Calvin Ridley, and I believe Russell Gage is still questionable for this game as well. So you would be getting further down the depth chart there. So it's not a bad call at all. And I think the point that I would reemphasize again is there's better options out there, I think, this week. One of which Coach has here in his article, to start Cam Newton of the New England Patriots against the Denver Broncos. Newton has been removed from the COVID list, and he will be out there as New England resumes their season after their impromptu bye week last week when the game against Denver got postponed. So the Patriots are going to be back in action. Coach, walk us through why you love Cam Newton so much, other than he's Cam Newton, and I'm all for Cam Newton any day of the week.
Yeah, so the Broncos D has given up 21.7 fantasy points a game to quarterbacks through their first four. And what was interesting was that the last time out, they gave up 23.6 fantasy points to Sam Darnold and the Jets, who I already mentioned. I don't see how Adam Gase is fit to lead an NFL team. But looking at that game, Sam Darnold rushed for 84 yards against the Broncos, and most of it was on a 46-yard run, but he had 5 other carries for 38 yards. And I'm sure that Bill Belichick, as he watched the film, saw lots of ways that they could take advantage of that. I think that Cam's going to put up at least, I think a safe bet's at least 40, 50 yards on the ground. And so you take that, the possibility of a rushing touchdown on there as well, and then whatever he gets as a passer, you have an extremely high floor. I think he's in a great matchup where he'll be quarterback one easily this week, as long as he is running and is fully healthy for this game. So I need to just continue to monitor and make sure, but he is off the COVID list, so it does look like he's ready to play.
Yeah, that's great news for the Patriots for sure, as they look to get back in the win column after dropping to the Chiefs there a couple of weeks ago. And then COVID has just kind of been throwing their season out of whack here since. Interesting, to me, I guess I really anticipated a much larger kind of drop-off in this Denver Broncos defense this season than we're seeing. You lose Von Miller before the season, and they also have lost Jurrell Casey now for the year as well. And yet, they're still kind of hovering around the middle of the pack in terms of efficiency numbers across the board. Curious as to your thoughts, and I know he's not in the article here, but we saw Damian Harris, kind of come out and have his coming out party there against the Chiefs. He didn't score a touchdown, but 100 yards rushing. He looked a lot better than Sony Michel did in doing so. It's a tough matchup here against Denver this week. Are you so the owners that have, I guess, presumably picked him up here in most leagues, he probably wasn't rostered going into the week there against the Chiefs or drafted here, unless you're in deeper leagues. Are you throwing him out there in a flex spot?
So I've long been wary of New England Patriots running backs. It seems like it's tough to predict. Typically, it seems like all of a sudden you think you've got it figured out. You think Damian Harris looks like he's the guy, and then all of a sudden it's a Rex Burkhead week. Or the only guy that I really am usually pretty comfortable throwing out there for the Patriots is James White. Just because his floor is always going to be there, his role is always safe. I think Damian Harris does look like the play this week, but it's one of those plays where you have to expect that there is a floor there, and if he fumbles or if there's if Bill Belichick decides to scheme something differently, he might be phased out of the game plan as well. So I do think he's worthy of a flex, but I do think that the floor is very real, as he might only see 5 to 10 touches too, and just because again, with Bill Belichick, you never know what you're going to get out of the running backs there.
Yeah, it's a tough call for sure. I like your takes on this being a big running game as well as passing for Cam Newton. I could just see like a lot of different looks coming out of maybe the read options, or protection breaks down, and if he can't find an open receiver here and there, he's going to take off running. I don't know. Well, I guess I'll throw this out there. I could see Cam Newton running for leading the team in rushing yards. I think James White will have a role as a pass catcher, like always, out of the backfield there. But he's not necessarily your carries back. I could see Cam Newton out rushing Damian Harris in this game. It's a tough matchup for the back there out of Alabama. But I think he'll be fine going forward. He's not a guy I'm looking to drop by any means after this performance. Patriots want to run the football. I think that's going to be their bread and butter here for the remainder of the season. So good stuff there with New England. The final quarterback Coach had in his article this week, Mr. Teddy Covers of the Panthers. Teddy Covers has turned into Teddy Wins lately, man. He's great against the spread for us NFL bettors who have been following Bridgewater throughout his careers. And now he's just piling up wins, 3 straight for the Panthers. They are short home favorites against the Bears this week. That's an interesting line to me. I might have to take a look at that one here as we go into the week. But they've looked good. The defense has been better. In the offense under Matt Rule and Joe Brady, that tandem has come together nicely. And we were even talking on the Monday show, Jake Tanner and I, whether or not Teddy Bridgewater may, kind of carve out a role here in Carolina going forward. As things are trending right now, the Panthers may not have the draft capital a lot of people presumed coming into the season, myself included. But he's looked great, and coach is telling us to sit him this week against the Bears. What's up?
Yeah, so I got to mention here, I live in Minnesota, and so I'm a Packers fan. I transplanted from Wisconsin, but I have a lot of friends that are Vikings fans, and I've told them for several years that I think they let their best quarterback slip away here, and I think Teddy Bridgewater has looked really good in Carolina. This one's not so much about Teddy Bridgewater, as I think he's playing very well. I have him. He was QB4 a couple weeks ago and QB12 last week. This one's just based against the Bears defense. They're only giving up 12.7 fantasy points per game. They made Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, they embarrassed them on Thursday night there, had Tom Brady wondering if it was 4th down or not at the end of that game there. And this defense is legit. I just think this week and this season, there's so many good quarterback plays. I have Bridgewater down at 18th. So there's just so many good quarterback plays. I mean, even if you're streaming Kirk Cousins or picking up Andy Dalton, I would play either of those guys over Bridgewater this week, just because the matchup's so tough. It's kind of a case of an embarrassment of riches at quarterback, really, where it's tough each week looking to see who's the top 12 and then really looking to see who's probably not going to finish amongst them, because, you probably go about 16 quarterbacks deep in any one week where you have guys that could legit throw for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is really, the baseline for a good QB1 start. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Just looking at the slate of games here this week, I mean, we dive into it. You could realistically Matthew Stafford, good matchup there with the Jaguars. Gardner Minshew in that same game, Lions-Jaguars, that's a good matchup. Who else we got here? Daniel Jones maybe against the Washington football team. I don't know how far we want to go there. We know Daniel Jones's turnover issues. Ryan Fitzpatrick has a great matchup with the Jets. We already talked about Cam Newton, of course. I would tend to agree that there are a lot of positive quarterback matchups here, where they're guys that aren't always in that top tier. And of course, we say these positive matchups, and we already we're assuming the Deshaun Watsons, the Lamar Jacksons, the Kyler Murrays. Those are weekly starters. The rushing ability that they bring to the table, and their overall position in the offense. So a lot of that makes sense there. The point I wanted to bring up about the Bears defense, they are a lot better efficiency-wise against the pass than the run. So that would play right into this as well, to what Coach is saying here. They rank 6th overall in adjusted efficiency against the pass, 17th against the run. Maybe a bit of a Mike Davis day here, but at the same time, I could very well see Mike Davis kind of having a tough day of it, tougher than we've grown accustomed to here as he fills in for Christian McCaffrey if Carolina's not able to get a ton going in the passing game. A passing offense that has looked great, by the way. DJ Moore finally got going a little bit last week to complement Robbie Anderson. This Carolina offense is going to have fantasy value going forward, but probably are better options than Bridgewater here this week. So we'll move to running backs here now, Coach. And we'll start, I guess, with Myles Gaskin going up against my New York Jets. And,
Yeah.
I mean, you can start a lot of people against the Jets these days. But I am going to throw this one at you before you start on your deep dive into this. The Jets do rank 9th in adjusted efficiency defending the run. They're terrible against the pass. We're top 10 still against the run, as bad as we looked last week against the Cardinals. So aside from volume alone, why are you so high on Gaskin this week?
Yeah, and just one other name as far as kind of on the running Adam Gase town wagon here. You just mentioned Robbie Anderson, another case in point for why we see Robbie Anderson coming out of the New York, and now he's in Carolina, and he's looking every bit a wide receiver one. I mean, he's getting the targets. He's looking great. He's running not just the deep routes, but he's really developed here this year and looking great. And you just kind of wonder why guys just always stagnate when they're under Adam Gase.
You kind of wonder. You do. I've stagnated as a Jets fan while I've been under.
For sure. Myles Gaskin last week, I had him as a sit last week, and that was one that I got wrong. The 49ers defense, and actually I've got them written up here again, but the 49ers defense is one of the best in the league, one of the top 2 in the league as far as against running backs, even after Gaskins had 20 points against them last week. The Jets give up 24.9 fantasy points a game to running backs. Last week, with Howard being he was a healthy scratch before the game. And so with that, Myles Gaskin got 21 touches. With Howard likely going to be a healthy inactive this week as well, I think you're going to see Gaskin get at least 18 plus touches. I think you'll see Breida get some work as well, Matt Breida. And but I just think with 18 touches, I think that the Dolphins are going to win this game. I think they're 8.5 point favorite. I would probably take the Dolphins on that one, just because I think they look much better than last year. Fitzpatrick's out there. Fitzmagic is in full effect. He's that offense is playing well. The defense played well last week. So I like Gaskin this week. I think he's going to get some, and I think he's probably going to get some carries and mop-up duty as well when they have the game and it's kind of running situations later on.
Yeah, I completely agree. Myles Gaskin, to me, at this point, I think he just has weekly volume. He is the guy in Miami. And to kind of tie this whole show in together, we broke the story of Le'Veon Bell signing there with the Chiefs off the top. The Dolphins were the other team that it came right down to the wire there as a potential suitor. And right before we got the news, before the show, we were talking a little bit about how we thought that Miami kind of made more sense here in terms of where he would want to sign and where Le'Veon Bell would wind up. That didn't happen. And so it's just, full sail ahead here, full steam ahead for Myles Gaskin. My bookie odds right now on Jets Dolphins is an even 10.
Wow.
That's a lot to lay. Very, very different from 8.5 for sure.
I think it opened at 8.5, if I'm not mistaken, but
yeah, I believe it did too. It's funny. I was looking at different pie charts and stuff, just the distribution of bets last week at a couple of Las Vegas books. So of course, not in Vegas, you got different professional handicappers and such that are going to kind of play against the public a little bit. Jets only took like 6% of tickets. Like, no one wants to bet on this team right now. So it's not surprising we've seen a little line movement here in the Dolphins' direction. So yeah, Myles Gaskin, I think you can lock him in this week. And I think you can lock him in to, at worst, a flex role going forward. I really like and I know the Miami offensive line isn't great, but he's still getting it done. And there's a consistent floor there with touches that we're seeing out of Myles Gaskin. The other start call at running back Coach had, this is a guy coming back here for the first time, his first action since week 1. That's Phillip Lindsay with the Denver Broncos. So we go back to this Denver-New England game. The Patriots defense held up well against the Chiefs a couple of weeks ago. Of course, that was before the COVID issues pushed this game back. And big news in this Denver backfield, Melvin Gordon had a DUI here earlier this week. And so he is not going to be out there for this one. Phillip Lindsay's coming back. Couldn't be at a better time as Denver needs bodies in that backfield. Talk to us a little bit more about Lindsay, Coach, and also if you want to go into it, and any outlook for Royce Freeman behind him. We know Denver kind of likes to work that 2 RB set a lot.
Yeah. Real quickly, have you gotten confirmation that Gordon is, in fact, for sure out this week?
I don't have. I guess I don't have.
I heard it was still not.
Let me try and search that up while you talk if you want. I don't have.
Yeah.
This one did not say it's confirmed.
He's not
it
out
just said it's like
at all, guys.
all but.
But Vic Fangio has been pretty public in his disgrace and wanting to hold Melvin Gordon accountable. So I would assume even if he's active somehow through some miracle, he would probably, be held out of a quarter or a half or something. He would do some kind of punishment like that.
Yeah. And if that is the case, especially if he's held out, that's really where I was looking at Phillip Lindsay being a great play this week. Phillip Lindsay we talk about, I think a couple podcasts ago, it was after Tyrod Taylor had the shot that went awry and it became Justin Herbert's job there in with the Chargers. We talked about how he's kind of had a bad shake in the NFL. And you talk about a bad shake, Phillip Lindsay, all he's done is been a great producer whenever he's on the field, and the Broncos have looked to move on. And so they brought in Gordon this year, and we didn't really get a full chance to see what they were going to look like together in the backfield. I think it's going to be more of a 50-50 type split, 60-40 than people might think. I do think Lindsay has a role even when Gordon's playing. This week, this start play is based on Gordon being either out or in a reduced role, as Zach had mentioned, where he's going to sit out either a quarter or half. Freeman is also probably going to see a bump in that scenario. I just think Lindsay has proven himself to be the better back between those two over the last couple of years. Unless Gordon is actually out for the game, I wouldn't have Freeman in there. Perhaps if Gordon, I see they're talking about a 3-game suspension. I'm not sure if that would come down this year or when that would come down. I'm sure there'll be appeals and stuff on that. But so I would like Lindsey. I think he's definitely in play as an RB2 if we find out that there's going to be if we find out Gordon's going to be on the bench here for all or part of the game.
Yeah, I just went digging for a few more updates. I'm seeing perhaps Gordon's league suspension may not start until mid-November, so they may drag out their judicial process a little bit. So it looks like, at least from these reports, and what Zach kind of mentioned, that it's going to be on the shoulders of Vic Fangio and the Broncos here for Sunday. With that said, whether Gordon's out there or not this week, I couldn't agree more with your call on Phillip Lindsay and his role in this backfield going forward. I think if he's healthy, the guy was not really projected to be anything coming out of college. Was he undrafted free agent, I believe, right out of Colorado? I don't think he got drafted.
Yeah.
If he did, it was really late. And he's been nothing but good. He's come in, he's performed. He's not the biggest guy, but Phillip Lindsay gets it done. And I full-heartedly see Denver splitting that backfield up going forward, regardless of how the legal process plays out with Melvin Gordon. So it could, in a way, turn into a nightmare for fantasy owners, kind of, cannibalizing the value of each other, like we so often see happen with these committee backfields. But the Broncos want to run the football, especially with no Courtland Sutton here the rest of the year. I think that is still the main game plan of this offense. And so there are going to be touches to go around. And both backs are capable of getting it done in the pass game as well. So a little added PPR value there. I don't think either one of them is maybe necessarily a fantasy star the rest of the way. But I think both will have consistent roles in that offense. Speaking of committee backfields, Coach, with a couple of those in this week's Start-Sit article, the calls are to sit all Baltimore Ravens running backs against the Eagles, and for me, pretty much every week. And then also sitting all Rams running backs against that tough 49ers run defense that is so good in terms of fantasy points allowed to the position. Coach, I'm going to make you make a decision here. You can pick one of these running back committees that you want to dive into deeper here, and let's do it.
Yeah, so let's talk the Ravens running back committee. I mentioned a couple weeks ago that Mark Ingram is not going to return RB2 value this season. I don't even see that happening, possibly even if there's an injury there. They have Justice Hill still in the wings. Even if J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards goes down, I think you're going to still be looking at possibly a 3-man rotation and Lamar Jackson taking everything off the top of that as well. But I'm actually saying here, if you can get anything for Ingram, this might be a great time to unload him. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards. Unless you're in a dynasty league, I could see holding on to J.K. Dobbins in that. But this week they play at the Eagles, Eagles are giving up 17.8 fantasy points a game. Then they have a bye next week, and then they play Steelers, Colts, and Patriots, who give up 14.5, 13.5, and 15.3 fantasy points per game, which are all top 10 in the league as far as defenses against running backs. If you can get anything close to RB2 value for Mark Ingram right now, I would pull the trigger on that just because his value is plummeting by the week as people are seeing that he's just the workload's not there. When you're looking at 13 touches tops, I think he's the most he's had is I want to say the high for touches that he's had is, let me just take a look here. his high for touches is 11 in any 1 week. So
That's not getting it done.
no. No, and the Ravens' offense hasn't been as spectacular as last season to this point. And those 11 touches, especially when J.K. Dobbins is getting some near the goal line too, and it's pretty much a pretty even split in timeshare between the three of them. So if anyone still has an interest in Mark Ingram, I would unload him for whatever you could get at this point.
Couldn't agree more. Honestly, I might rather own Gus Edwards at this point than Mark Ingram, and I'm being 100% serious. And I don't think I would have ever said that. I wasn't high on any of the Ravens running backs coming into the season. Am I crazy for even saying that?
Well, Edwards has he's had I'm looking at his touches over the first 5 weeks. He's had 4, 10, 4, 9, and 7. The thing for him is last week he had 3 targets in the passing game. So he hasn't really had a lot of targets in the passing game. The one guy that I still would hold on to here is J.K. Dobbins, but his role has been pretty minimal too. Last week he only had 1 rush and 3 receptions. He scored 2 touchdowns in week 1. So I mean, I'm having a hard time finding how you would start any of these guys unless you're in an absolute pinch and you need just a guy who's a body to put out there. I would try and stay away from this backfield or see what you could get for them. If any of them happens to score 2 touchdowns in a game, I would try and trade them right then.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So fantasy football is all about volume, right? And so when Coach and I are talking about these opportunities that these players have, we're not looking at the yards necessarily that they put up or the touchdowns scored in previous weeks. What you want to zoom in on are the opportunities to produce. That's how we're determining here this Ravens backfield. Baltimore's offense, it's not looking like it's been, but they're still scoring. But there's just such a timeshare going on here. That's why we're so down on this Baltimore backfield. If you want more stats like this, over at flurrysports.org, same place where you can find Coach's Start-Sit article, under the NFL tab of the site, there's a couple of drop-down options, one of which is running back snaps and usage stats. So if you go to that page, you'll scroll down and you'll see a table, and every single running back for every team that got on the field for the preceding week is in that table. So, of course, we're heading into week 6, so we have week 5 stats in that table and updated. And for the Ravens, Gus Edwards led all running backs in snaps with 25 last week. Mark Ingram was behind at 19, and J.K. Dobbins with 18. Rushing attempts, Mark Ingram led there with 11. Gus Edwards was 7. And Dobbins, like Coach said, with just 1. And then routes ran in the passing game, so PPR, this is still important. Edwards led with 14. Dobbins ran 12 routes, Mark Ingram only 6. So, do with those numbers, I think, what you will when you're looking at this offense. And last week's game wasn't exactly close. And I think we've seen Gus Edwards come in a lot in mop-up duty. But, man, it's just hard to trust any of these guys on a given week. And I think Coach and I are both in agreement that if you can get anything significant trade-wise in return, if you are an owner of a Mark Ingram or even a J.K. Dobbins, I think for me, I know you said you'd want to hold him. I wouldn't hesitate. Somebody's throwing me a good depth piece. I think he can be moved. If they're like, oh, J.K. Dobbins is going to take over this backfield here going forward, it's going to happen. They spent that draft capital on him. I don't see it happening that quick. I think there would be a safer way to go for me.
Yeah, and that's when I mention him, it's more of if you're in a deeper dynasty type of league, season long. If it's just a yearly type of league, I would not be interested in keeping him at this point. I just don't see how anyone's going to truly differentiate themselves in this backfield. Most backfields, if it's a 50-50 type of timeshare, if one guy goes down, you kind of see an instant, RB1 come out of that. But if this, even if one goes down, at most you're looking at 50-50 for a timeshare where a quarterback takes a chunk of the running plays as well. And then, like I mentioned, I still think Justice Hill would pop up there, and you'd see him playing and at least taking a few touches each week. So there's no path here where I see any of these running backs being an RB2 or better the rest of this year, where you can consistently put them in there and feel like you're going to get RB2 production.
I love your Justice Hill takes. I really do. I was so high on him coming out of Oklahoma State last year, and it's so frustrating, especially from a dynasty standpoint. But I digress. Yeah. We have a couple of questions for us, Coach, here in the YouTube chat here. Of course, we're streaming to both YouTube and Twitter. If you do have questions and you want to hop in the chat, head on over to the YouTube stream, and you can drop them in there. So we're talking about running backs, so I guess we should address these first. We got a combo question, though. Stephen Drake says, hey, fellas, need 2 full PPR. He has Todd Gurley, Myles Gaskin, and Kareem Hunt. Full point PPR, we're starting 2, Coach. Any significant leans there?
All right, we got Todd Gurley, Myles Gaskin, and what was the third one?
The third one was Kareem Hunt, who, of course, with that Browns rushing attack, looks great. He has been a little bit banged up, though. Browns are at the Steelers, and then we've got the Falcons and Vikings. Of course, that game somewhat in jeopardy with the COVID news, and Gaskin going up against the Jets.
I would probably say I think Kareem Hunt is an every week start with Nick Chubb out. I just his usage in the passing game and his role there. I think you have to start Kareem Hunt of those. He would be my first one in. So then between Gaskin and Gurley, it's tough to say considering Gurley's had a couple games with I think he scored a couple touchdowns in 2 straight games, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's correct. He's finally turning some reward on the draft capital spent on him. It was a rough couple first few weeks there.
Yeah, it's tough based on name value. I'm just looking to see between the two of them. Boy, I think I would go Kareem Hunt for sure, and I think of the other between Gaskin and Gurley. I think I would go Gurley between those two.
Yeah, that's a really tough call. I'm with you. I don't think you can sit Kareem Hunt. Just how large a part of the Browns offense that rushing attack is, and I know it's a tough matchup against the Steelers. Kareem Hunt's got to be in there, like you said, with Nick Chubb out. That just all the more confirms the play for me. The interesting one, though, is Gurley and Gaskin. I have here the Vikings allowing 25.28 fantasy points in PPR scoring to the position, and the Jets are over 30. Do with that what you will. We already talked a little bit about the Jets having a decent run defense efficiency-wise. The Vikings do not. They rank 27th. I think you got to go Gurley. I think I'm going to side with you there, especially talking a little bit about the concerns with that Atlanta passing offense. What kind of weapons are they going to have? How effective is that going to be going forward? Man, at the same time, I can see Atlanta really just coming out and laying a dud in this game. But it's tough. But I'm going to roll with Gurley too. So I think we're going to go Kareem Hunt and Todd Gurley there. That's a tough man. And then a little receiver talk here for Stephen Drake's Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson. So that would be Cooper Kupp against the 49ers on Sunday Night Football, and then Jefferson in that Atlanta matchup. That's a juicy matchup. Cooper Kupp's Cooper Kupp, though. I think that's what this one boils down to.
Yeah, that's a tough one as well. I think I would go with Cooper Kupp on that one, just based on we saw last week that was a prime matchup for Jefferson last week against the Seahawks, and Jefferson didn't really do much. It was Thielen that was catching everything. It was Thielen that was getting all the looks. I could see the same thing happening against the Falcons, where Thielen gets the large majority of the targets. See how many targets Jefferson got last week.
I can dig that up for you here.
Yeah, it looks like he had 5 targets last week, which I think Thielen had 13 targets last week. I think I would play Cooper Kupp would be my choice of those, just because he's more established in the offense. You know what you're going to get from him as far as target share. And even though the 49ers matchup does appear tougher on paper, Fitzpatrick was just shredding them last week, and that secondary and their defensive line too being banged up. I just think actually think the Rams should be able to do quite well against them. So I would go Kupp this week of those two.
Yeah, I like that call. I can't say I disagree. So I guess what I'll do is I'll kind of dive into why I might lean Jefferson here a little bit. And that is because the Rams offense, it's predicated on running the football, right? So, we see if the ground game is slow to get going, and Jared Goff has to be one-dimensional. That's a big part of why Los Angeles struggled last year. And now they have this tandem of running backs who mix and match. Sean McVay is able to get production and open things up. And LA's looked a lot better here this year. But we were talking about how difficult it is for running backs to accumulate fantasy points against the 49ers. And I know some of that is touchdowns scored and whatnot. But even with the injuries, there's just so many bodies that the 49ers are able to throw at an opposing offensive line along that front. Will the Rams be able to run the football? And we can even dive into this from a betting angle. Everyone's leaving the 49ers for dead now that they lost to Ryan Fitzpatrick. The line for this game opened as the 49ers 3-point favorites. And it's swung all the way to Rams a full 3, I think even 3.5 at a lot of places. And, if you're a 49ers backer, you're just waiting this out because it just seems like it's going to keep climbing. And so everyone's on the Rams here to have this game. And it just, San Francisco's got to get this. They're 2-3. The Rams and Seahawks, if LA wins this, they're going to be running away with the division. Justin Jefferson, I know Adam Thielen's there. I know we saw Irv Smith get going a little bit last week. The tight end there, second-year man out of Alabama. And I know Dalvin Cook's questionable for this game. That's just such a good matchup. I would almost bank a higher total for Jefferson against Atlanta's defense than I would Cooper Kupp going up against San Francisco this week. And I really mean that. It's crazy to say that. Even in taking a backseat to Thielen last week, Jefferson's still on the field, 69 snaps, 79.3% of snaps he was on the field. And then his target share, let me just get that here. Looks like only 13.2% of the targets. I think that number is going to come back based on what we saw in the weeks prior. Might have just talked myself into Jefferson here. So I don't know if that helped because we're on different sides of the spectrum there. But I guess whoever you liked that broke that down better, both have potential. Jefferson definitely has the superior matchup. And I think in him, kind of stepping into that Stephon Diggs role, I'm going to roll with him here on this one.
Would you say between the two that Jefferson might be a little lower floor, higher ceiling, and Cooper Kupp's probably a little higher floor, maybe lower ceiling of the two?
That's absolutely, yeah. That's a good way of putting it. I think Jefferson has a better potential to really explode here. So, if you need points out of this position, depending on your matchup, how the rest of your team kind of shakes out, and you need to bank on a lot of points here, I think I would roll with Jefferson. If you want something that someone who is going to give you a solid floor, I think that's Cooper Kupp in this place. That's a great way of putting it. So, all right. Next in the YouTube chat, reminder, if you're watching on Twitter and you have a question, head on over to YouTube. Ask us your questions there in the chat. X Miles, thoughts on Jerick McKinnon? This is interesting. Raheem Mostert came back, and Tevin Coleman was, of course, still out. And Jerick McKinnon kind of operated in that third down pass catcher role when he was with the Vikings. Talking about guys who've had bad luck, McKinnon was set to be the guy there in that 49ers backfield before he had that difficult injury and had to miss almost essentially an entire season and a half, 2 seasons there. So I think if it's me, I'm not dropping him by any means at this stage. But he is much tougher to start at this point, especially with other 49ers pass catchers getting healthy. Coach, what do you think?
Yeah, I think his role in this offense with Mostert back now here, I think you mentioned he was still getting touches earlier on this year, kind of operating a third down type role. I still think he's going to get 6 to 10 touches a week. I don't see him getting more than that with Mostert in there. And he was still scoring touchdowns, I think, initially the first few games of the year. I think, he had a touchdown in 4 straight games there before last week. And the first 2 games, he was, kind of in a similar role. So I think I would still hold him. Wouldn't consider dropping him at this point, just because we know the value's there if Mostert goes down. But I think that I wouldn't look to start him. Maybe as a flex would be about as high as I'd consider starting him while Mostert's in the lineup.
Last week against the Dolphins, of course, the 49ers got blown out of the building in that one. Shout out Fitzmagic. Raheem Mostert in his first game back, 31 snaps. That was a 48.4% snap share. 11 rushing attempts, 12 routes ran. Jerick McKinnon, 16 snaps, so 25% of San Francisco's total offensive plays won. Just 1 rushing attempt, 11 routes ran. Kyle Juszczyk actually sat between them, 34.4% snap share. He ran 9 routes, had 2 rushing attempts. As someone who Jeffrey Wilson definitely droppable, I think, with Mostert back. McKinnon's I think those numbers speak for themselves. He's the PPR back at this point, and if you're, especially as we head into bye weeks here, and you need somebody to throw into a flex, that's about the extent of the value I think Jerick McKinnon's going to have with Raheem Mostert back in the lineup. Is that kind of seem like we're on the same wavelength there?
Yeah, I think we're both kind of seeing this the same. I view him as a high value handcuff who will provide some help in a pinch if you need to throw a body out there at RB2 one week because you're down a bunch of guys, you have some bye weeks or injuries, and then if you need a flex, you could fit him in there. But yeah, I just I don't see there being. I'm just looking to see his next few matchups here too. So it's this week, the Rams, and then he goes at New England the following week at Seattle. So yeah, definitely a hold, but I wouldn't look to play him.
Awesome. Good stuff. And, Coleman still being out, who knows, Mostert could go down again. So I think definitely I agree. He's a solid handcuff option. If you're in a pinch here with bye weeks coming and whatnot. So that would be the thoughts on Jerick McKinnon. One more question to get to here in the chat for now. Truman, a little tight end start sit here. So Coach's article doesn't dive this deep, so we're going to go off the beaten path here for some tight end action. We got 3 choices, and we're starting one. Would you start Robert Tonyan? The Packers are playing the Buccaneers. Zach Ertz, Eagles against the Ravens this week. Or TJ Hawkinson, the Lions going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Boy, so that's a tough one. Tanyan's been on a hot streak here. He's let's see, he's got touchdowns in 3 straight games. So let's see here. Hawkinson's at the Jaguars. We got Zach Ertz, who's had a pretty disappointing season so far here.
And that's even without Dallas Goedert in the lineup, as he's been down with injury here the last few weeks and will continue to be going forward. So that's a little concerning there for Ertz. If you need time to look at more stuff, I'll give my pitch here for Mr. TJ Hawkinson of the Lions.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to look on the numbers a little bit here so I can check this out a little further.
Yeah, of course. So I would be rolling with I think I would be rolling with Hawkinson from a matchup standpoint. The Jaguars are allowing 16.2 fantasy points per game to the tight end position. Adjusted defensive efficiency, the Jaguars rank dead last in defending against the pass. That's according to Football Outsiders DVOA metrics. And I know Zach Ertz is he's the big name of the 3 here. You got Tonyan, who's come out of nowhere, Ertz, who's established, and then you got Hawkinson kind of, somewhere in the middle. The way I'm handicapping this Lions-Jaguars game, I think Detroit blows the doors off Jacksonville this week. They're coming out of a bye. It's a team that, they're 1-3 at this point. They could very easily be 3-1 if they don't choke against the Bears, and they were up 14-0 against the Saints and kind of gave that game away. There's definitely defensive issues. I think it could be a shootout, but I like the Lions to really be putting up a lot of points here. And if Jacksonville's able to get their offense going, the Lions are going to be forced to continue throwing the ball throughout the game. So that definitely makes Hawkinson intriguing. I would have to be off of Tonyan against the Bucs, I think, in this one compared to the other 2. But it is tough. Man. And the Ravens are allowing, it looks like I have 12.5 PPR points per game to the position. But, the Eagles' offense looked good last week. That's the first time they've really looked good in a game, and they fell way behind in that game, and they looked, they put up points when they were playing catch-up. I'm not convinced I want to trust the Philadelphia offense as a whole at this juncture either, especially in a difficult matchup there. I don't know, Coach, anything you're finding that kind of disagree with my breakdown?
Yeah, so I'm looking at this, and according to my rankings, it looks like Ertz would be the top play, but I would probably consider Hawkinson above him. So then I look at the rankings and figure Ertz kind of has really been a disappointment this year, and the matchup's tough. I don't like the matchup here for him. I do think Hawkinson, between the 2, I would probably lean Hawkinson. So if just between Hawkinson and Ertz, and then Tanyan, with his recent hot streak, I was just looking at the numbers here, and so he's had over the past 3 games here, he's had 3, 5, and 6 targets, and so it's his usage has increased each week. 2 weeks ago on week 4, he had 6 catches, 98 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Week before that, it was 5 catches for 50 yards. It's kind of one where I think my head says Hawkinson is the play here, but kind of my gut says I think I would like to roll Tanyan in there and see if this is for real.
Wow.
It's kind of one of those things where he's obviously got Aaron Rodgers' trust, and we know that Aaron Rodgers, when he has a receiver he likes, and that's a good place to be for fantasy purposes. I think Adams is coming back this week, but I could see Tanyan continuing to get the love from Rodgers there, and so I guess maybe I'll say Hawkinson's probably the numbers play, looking at the stats, looking at the matchup. But if you're a guy that likes to shoot from the hip, as far as and kind of keep players in there that are rolling, because sometimes you just get these players that go on these hot streaks and are really coming on for a few weeks there. And to me, I think Tanyan might be worth the dice roll there. So I guess I would say probably Hawkinson's probably the statistical analysis play, or Tanyan's kind of the let's see if he can keep it going play. So
That's an interesting call. I wasn't expecting that. I think for me too, the head says Hawkinson and the gut says Zach Ertz, just because it's Zach Ertz, Man, that is tough. But I guess to answer your question, Truman, both of our heads at least agree on TJ Hawkinson going up against that awful Jacksonville pass defense. So, you can take that for what it's worth. And if you want to roll with one of our guts, we're kind of splitting that 50-50 down the middle here. Man, those are good questions. Start sit is, to me, it's one of the toughest components of fantasy football. You can draft great. You can have depth for days on your bench, and you have depth. That's great. But then you got to know who to start each week. And so, that's why we do this show. That's why Coach writes this article. This is his wheelhouse right here. So, moving forward here, I guess we can touch on a few wide receiver calls you had in the article quick. Looking at the start plays, you called for A.J. Brown in his matchup this week against the Texans. Houston's pass defense, nothing to ride home about, that's for sure. And then Jamison Crowder, I like this one against the Dolphins. Coach, I'm going to let you kind of dive into one or dive into both here as you see fit, but I'll preface your arguments for both saying, as inept as this New York Jets offense is, Jamison Crowder is a weekly start for me. I don't see how you have unless you're stacked, unless you're one of those guys with all that depth that you drafted, like we were just talking about there, and you have to make these decisions. I don't see how you have someone that you're putting over him in a flex any given week. He's all the Jets have. So, but take it away with A.J. Brown and Crowder.
Yeah, well, real quick, just as far as A.J. Brown, we saw him back at full strength on Tuesday night. That sounds weird to say, but he had 7 catches for 82 yards. His first reception was a touchdown. And so now this week he has the Texans. Last year against the Texans, he had 8 catches for 114 yards and a touchdown, and 4 catches for 124 yards and a touchdown against them. They're giving up 24.2 fantasy points a game to wide receivers. Great start this week. I was surprised to see him ranked as low as he was, but he seems to me to be a surefire wide receiver too. And then just to kind of pile it on with Jamison Crowder.
Please do.
Yeah. So breaking down fantasy points per game, top 2 wide receivers this season. Number one, Devontae Adams with 24.1 fantasy points per game, and that's, he's had 2 games, basically 1 and 2/3 of a second game. And number 2 in the league is Jamison Crowder. Jamison Crowder has not had less than 7 catches for 104 yards in any of his 3 games he's played, and he has a touchdown in 2 of the 3 games as well. You mentioned it exactly. He's all they have. They're going to be down against the Dolphins, likely 10-point dogs now, which sounds weird to say that the Dolphins are 10-point favorites over anyone, but they're going to be having to pass. Jamison Crowder's a lock to get 10-plus targets. He's a wide receiver too for this point forward, I think. And there might come a time when teams decide that, but he's getting the slot looks too, so it's not like it's easy to double him from the slot. They'll bracket him, but he gets the slot targets, and it's tough to really shut down slot targets. So, I think he's a lock for 10-plus targets, and he's producing as well. So,
Jamison Crowder's played 3 games so far this year, and he has 10 targets in all of them. 13 in the first one, 10 in the second 2, over 100 receiving yards in all of them. 7 receptions, 8 receptions, over 14.5 yards per reception, averaged in every game. 2 touchdowns. Catch percentage, week 1 it was the lowest, right around 50%. 70 and 80 since he's come back from injury here, as bad as the Jets have looked the last 2 weeks. Yards per target, he's averaging over 10, and that's out of the slot role. He's a weekly start. You can feel how you want about the Jets. He's all we have in this offense, but he's getting it done. And well, we have Frank Gore too, but I digress. All right. Looking at some sit wide receiver calls from Coach's article here. One of these stands out to me is interesting. Well, they're both interesting. One of them on a bit of a different level. I guess we'll touch on Diontae Johnson first here. Chase Claypool was the star of the show last week for the Steelers. 4-touchdown day. I think he was the first rookie to do that since some year before I was born. And Diontae Johnson, it's interesting. He's been banged up here lately. You still have Juju Smith-Schuster there. James Conner can catch some passes out of the backfield. Eric Ebron, the tight end. He's a guy who's emerging with a consistent floor here as well. And I think you could do worse most weeks at that position than Eric Ebron. A little bit matchup dependent here for now. Not for a couple fumbles last week. That line, fantasy points wise, would have looked a lot better for him. So Johnson's a guy I was high about coming into the season. Things are changing a little bit there in Pittsburgh as far as his passing game. So if he's healthy and ready to go, why are we sitting him?
Yeah, so the reason that I recommend sitting Diontae Johnson this week, which first off, it does look like he got in a limited practice today. But he has the last 2 games he has not finished with 2 different injuries. This last one he had a back injury. So you gotta wonder how healthy he is at this point. It seems like he's pretty banged up. And the Browns D is giving up some points to opposing wide receivers. They're giving up 31.1 fantasy points per game. But like you touched on, I just think there's so many weapons here. If he's not feeling 100%, and wide receiver is so deep. When I write this article, I'm looking top 24 wide receivers. So guys that would be wide receiver 2. So I just don't see for Diontae Johnson. He's had really one good week this season. He's gotten targets a couple weeks there, but then he's left the last 2 games with injuries. And I think Chase Claypool's for real. I think that anytime you have a guy burst on the scene like that, really just blow up and look incredible doing it, I think you can't put that sort of production on the back burner. It's something that you kind of have to recognize that he's going to demand his targets on a weekly basis as well. I think Juju's probably going to pull the squeaky wheel thing at some point here. He's been kind of the overlooked guy here as well. He's been pretty quiet this season. I just think Deontay Johnson this week, until he plays a full week, and I kind of want to see how this shakes out with Chase Claypool as far as the target share and how that changes after his ridiculous performance last week.
There's a reason I wanted the Jets to draft Claypool there in that late second, early third round range where he ultimately wound up going. And Denzel Mims hasn't played a game, and Chase Claypool is scoring 4 touchdowns in a game. So I completely agree with the analysis on Claypool. I think he is for real. I think he's there to stay. I think Deontay Johnson is also for real, but given the injury situation, that I can fully see sitting him, even though the Browns secondary hasn't been bad. You have the injury combined with so many other weapons in that offense. In what, for my money too, I could see this being a relatively low-scoring game. I think it's going to be a close game, and just the way the Browns run the football on offense goes back to talking about Kareem Hunt. They're going to be churning clock. So, this could be an old-fashioned AFC North slug them out type division rivalry battle here. How much opportunity are you going to have for a guy like Johnson running down the field to make a play? So not a bad call there at all. Let's jump back into the chat here. We had a few more questions pop up for us. KJW Watkinson wants to know if we are starting Minshew Mania or Jared Goff at QB this week. So Gardner Minshew going up against that Lions team in that matchup that we've talked about a lot, how that could bring fantasy value, and Goff gets the 49ers. Any major leans off the top of your head? You want to dig around a little?
Yeah, I'm just taking a look here to see as far as matchups are concerned here. It looks like statistically should be good matchups for both quarterbacks. Between the two, I would lean Minshew based upon the fact that let me look a little further at this. Did you have any takes off the bat here?
It's got to be Goff for me. And I don't want to undermine any data you're going to pull up on Minshew. I guess you'll be undermining me if you're going to go second. But, in terms of fantasy points allowed, it's kind of a negligible difference. The Jaguars are a little over 21. I have here in PPR, and the Niners around 19.5. I just can't I just can't trust this Jacksonville offense right now. And I know the matchup is great. They have not looked good the last few weeks. And we could say the same thing about the matchup last week against the Texans. And I know there was the whole narrative with firing Bill O'Brien and on and on there, but the Texans' pass defense is not good. Hence why Coach had A.J. Brown there in the article this week. I got to go with Jared Goff. I know Jared Goff's going to be throwing the ball. I know the yardage totals here the last couple of weeks haven't been quite up to snuff with what we're accustomed to. But I think this is going to be a close game on Sunday Night Football. This is a must-win for the Niners. I think the Rams offense is going to have to make plays. They're going to have to score because the Rams defense has a lot of talent. I don't think they're shutting anyone down for a full 4 quarters. And I think we've seen that unless it's the Giants or Washington. But everyone else has gotten theirs here. So I see this as being a game where Goff's going to have to make a few plays. The rushing ability of Minshew is intriguing in that Detroit matchup. But I think I want to ride with Goff here. What about you?
Yeah, so as I'm looking at this, I'm just looking into a couple things here. I'm seeing that DJ Shark is out, or not out, but he missed practice again today. And so he's looking unlikely to play. with that said, and then my initial stats were popping up, San Fran, based on, some prior games. But, when we're taking into account with the injuries there, this matchup looks a whole lot better for Goff. The other thing, too, that's working in Goff's favor, as we touched on, is the Rams running backs have a very tough matchup this week. The 49ers run defense is one of the best in the league, one of the top 2 in the league. So they will have to pass it, and I don't think that that'll be an issue with the weapons that the Rams have. And Goff, it does look like does have the better matchup between the two, especially if DJ Shark is out. I think it's Goff for sure. So give me Goff of the 2 as well.
Good stuff. So we wind up agreeing there after all. And DJ Chark, that absence is huge for sure. Jacksonville Minshew just looks out of sync there without his top target. I know Laviska Shenault is coming along nicely there. But I agree. Goff is the safer play here for sure. One more question in the chat right now. Noah wants to know, would we drop Deebo Samuel or Michael Gallup for Myles Gaskin?
So that is a very good question. Yes, I would drop. Just looking to see rest of season rankings here where I have. Going into if Dak Prescott had not of broken his ankle there in that just horrible injury there on Sunday, to me, I would have probably leaned Gallup. Looked like he was kind of becoming the third wheel, and it looked like it was becoming the Cooper and CeeDee Lamb show. But then when Dalton came in there late in the game, he was spreading the targets pretty evenly between Cooper, Lamb, and Gallup there. And actually, when the game was on the line and they were driving for the field goal there, he did hit Gallup a couple times there. So it looked like there was a nice little rapport between those two. So I'd want to hold Gallup, I think, for the time being. The one that I'm just looking to see where Deebo Samuel is at here as far as kind of rest of the year rankings here. Yeah, just between the two, I think I would probably prefer to hold Gallup of the two, just because San Fran looks like more of a possibly a sinking ship at this point with some of the injury issues that they're having. Garoppolo was in, and then CJ Beathard was in last week. That's a tough call. It's hard to base Gallup's future production on just a few series with Dalton. Do you have any leans on this as far as your preference between the two?
Well, I think I'll preface this with saying, it kind of depends on what the rest of your team looks like. What's your depth at running back? What's your depth at wide receiver? Who are you trotting out in the flex position every week? Is it a running back or receiver? I'm assuming these guys are, kind of toward the back end of the starting lineup or the bench if you're considering dropping one of them here for Myles Gaskin. If it's a PPR league and you have a need for a running back, I'm comfortable dropping either one of them. Gaskin played 42 snaps, 63% of the snap share for Miami last week, and that was a blowout game. So I would assume that's going to be less than he sees in closer games going forward that are in doubt down the stretch. 16 rushing attempts, 13 routes ran in those 42 snaps. You're not going to find that kind of floor volume with any receiver. unless you're talking like a Michael Thomas or a Devontae Adams or a top guy, the ability there, the volume of those touches to produce fantasy stats, that's where running backs are just, that's where they're so important. Of the two receivers, if I were to drop one, it would be Michael Gallup. And I know Deebo Samuel's been out with injury. And I know Michael Gallup and Dalton seem to have a bit of a rapport there at the last game, the end of last week's game. Deebo Samuel, though, last week was on the field for almost 90% of the snaps. He led the team in terms of target share. Nearly 23% of targets went to Deebo Samuel. And with all the other weapons here in this Dallas offense, and also having to consider an overall downgrade, albeit we'll see how big of a downgrade it is with the switch from Prescott to Dalton at quarterback. Gallup's the odd man out here, and I think assuming you have need for additional running back depth in contemplating that you want to pick up Myles Gaskin, that'd be the guy I'd want to drop. And I may get bit for it, because if that carries over here going forward for the Cowboys and Gallup and Dalton do have that rapport, that one could come back to haunt me. But there's just the floor that Gaskin's volume allows. I think I would prefer that. Any final thoughts on that at all? Or
yeah. So for me, you hit the nail on the head. I would take a running back who, with the usage and the volume, over a wide receiver, unless it's a top wide receiver that you can bank on for targets. I'm just looking to see a little bit more as far as between Samuel and Gallup as far as schedule. And you were right. I didn't realize Samuel was on the field as much as he was last week there. Yeah, as I look at it here now, it does look like Samuel was back on the field and back. I think at the end of the day, volume being king in fantasy, I think Samuel might be in line for more volume just because of there being lesser targets in San Fran. So I think I would probably actually hedge Samuel, but I would drop either of them though for Gaskins, because I just think to me Gaskins is going to be an RB2 going forward, and I put Gallup and Samuel at like a wide receiver 3 tops. So I would take an RB2 over a wide receiver 3. And again, it depends on your roster too, as far as if you already have a bunch of good running backs and you're hurting at wide receiver, then you might want to reconsider that. But I've found in my years of playing fantasy that I'd rather hoard running backs and have plenty of those than any other position. So,
could not agree with you more. And as much as I hoard running backs, I always feel like I need more running backs. Like you can never have enough. I always feel like I have too many receivers and not enough running backs. So yeah, I could not agree with that statement more. If Gaskin's sitting there and he's available, pull the trigger. I think sure. Long term you'll be rewarded for it. Thank you to everyone who popped those questions there in the YouTube chat. Make sure you subscribe to the Flurry Sports YouTube channel, so you can you can get notifications of when we go live, when we post new video content. We're on here every week, just about every night. There's a show of some capacity regarding the NFL, regarding fantasy football, regarding NFL betting. So hit that subscribe button, and be sure to tune back in here for other shows coming up later on this week and throughout the season. Again, head on over to flurrysports.org, where you can find Coach's Start Sit article. You can go a little deeper into some of those calls he had. We can lay out all the numbers and stuff here on the stream, but sometimes it doesn't do you justice until you go to the article and see those numbers on the screen in front of you. So head on over, check that out, along with all the other fantasy football content, flurrysports.org. If somebody fell through the cracks on your waiver wire, they got that article up. The weekly rankings are out to help you with more start-sit decisions that we may not have covered here tonight. a couple of breakout player articles as well, some names to watch in deeper leagues. That's all over at flurrysports.org. And again, check out Monkey Knife Fight. You can see the promo code there to the, I guess it would be my left if I'm looking at you on the screen. Instant deposit match up to $50 and a free $5 bonus to play with when you use the promo code Flurry at Monkey Knife Fight. Head on over and check them out. Coach, I think we covered everything. We talked about Le'Veon Bell. We talked about the COVID news. We talked about the start sit. Anything else you wanted to touch on before we sign off?
I do have a quick question for you. Jets, Frank Gore, running back. Any thoughts on La'Mical Pirine? Is any thoughts on a future there for him? Is it? I have him in a deep dynasty league, 26-man rosters, and so I'm just curious to hear. Perhaps you have an insider take there on kind of how the Jets running back situation might shake out here. If they're building for the future, I can't imagine Frank Gore is a part of that, but perhaps he is. He is bionic after all.
Yeah, it's got to come to an end at some point for Frank Gore, unfortunately. And I don't think, Gore's already been public with saying that's not going to be with the Jets. He wants to retire a 49er. So I don't assume Frank Gore is in our future plans beyond this year. I don't also assume Adam Gase is in our plans beyond this year. La'Mical Pirine, I also have, I have one share of him. I might have two shares, actually. I'm in a few different dynasty leagues, but yeah, a deeper dynasty league. I have Pirine. And I think at worst case, you're looking at a guy who's going to get some increased run here as the Jets kind of play some of their younger guys here the rest of the year. And going forward, he's a back who, while he may not be the every down workhorse, the Jets like what they have from everything I've heard. And I could very easily see them pairing him with, a free agent addition, or perhaps if they opt to select another running back here in the coming draft. There's a lot of other holes to fill on this team, both sides of the ball for sure. But there are some names there: Chuba Hubbard, Najee Harris, Jarrett Patterson. Shout out to UB, the Buffalo Bulls. That's my school. But I like La'Mical Pirine. He wouldn't be a guy that I'm dropping. He wouldn't be a guy that I'm trading. I'd definitely be holding him here for now. As somebody who could have some run going forward.
Is he worth a speculative add in season-long leagues, do you think, at this point, or is it a little premature for that?
Depends on the size of the league.
Sure.
For me.
Sure.
Man, I'm in a 16-team redraft, and I want to add him badly. And then I'm in another 16-teamer, and he's owned. And in that one, I have Frank Gore. So, I'm hoping that playing his old team here this week and the homecoming in Miami for Frank Gore, that'll be the right side. It depends on the size of the league. If you're talking 16-teamer, I think you could add Pirine. So who knows how this is going to shake out? As bad as the Jets' running game has looked, touch has got to go somewhere.
Sure.
That's one of the best parts about fantasy football. They say the point spread is the great equalizer. Fantasy football keeps every player on every team relevant. Look at Jamison Crowder. So speculative ad in a deeper league for sure. La'Mical Pirine.
Gotcha.
All right. Fun show tonight. Thanks again to everyone for the questions. FlurrySports.org. It's the place to be for weekly fantasy football content. Monkey Knife Fight. Promo code Flurry. Get that free money. Stay tuned to FlurrySports.org for some free picks and ways to use that free money that you get when you sign up over at Monkey Knife Fight. We're going to be doing some MKF-related content here coming up. So be sure to stay tuned into that. Coach, it's been a pleasure.